Top 14, the top tier of French rugby, is the most lucrative rugby union competition in the world. It includes some historic stadiums, some unique modern stadiums, and even an indoor one. Let's check out the top 14 stadiums. Stade Jean d'Auger. Like many stadiums in France, this was originally a velodrome. The French really liked their cycling. If only they could hold some sort of race across the country to capitalize on that popularity. Like their own version of the Giro d'Italia, but it'll never happen. As you can probably see, they put a running track around the field after the velodrome was removed, and finally they came to their senses and dropped a couple of stands on top of it to basically make it a rugby specific stadium, albeit an imperfect one. Stade Charbon-Delmas. This stadium is known for its distinctive architecture both inside and out. It was the first stadium in the world to have a roof sheltering most spectators without any pillars holding it up. It is in fact made out of concrete, which you don't see every day. Due to the architecture, the stadium is in fact protected from demolition. Rightly so. This too had a cycling track back in the day, but like I said, that is common in France, so I'm not going to keep mentioning it. Unlike the last one though, there is no track of any sort in sight. The spectators are pretty close to the field, considering. Stade Amaury Domenech. It goes to show you how far ahead of its time the last one was, because the main stand here does have pillars holding up the roof, despite being much newer, albeit just a few of them. There's not much in the way of distinctive architecture or state-of-the-art amenities, but I'm liking the clean grey and white colour scheme. And overall, I have to say, it's a pretty good stadium for a city of just 45,000 or so. Stade Pierre Fabre. For the most part, this is a fairly standard stadium, however the triple-tiered eastern stand is very distinctive. Of course, you do see triple-tiered stands elsewhere, but this one just looks a little different. I believe it was built just a few years ago. Another thing that sets this place apart is the south stand. Now that might look completely normal, and it is, structurally speaking. However, the seats in this stand are reserved for kids, who are let in free of charge. So that's nice to see. Stade Marcel Michelin. In case you were wondering, yes, it is referring to that Michelin. The stadium was built on land that was originally owned by Michelin, the tire company. Unlike the roly-poly fat white thing that is the face of Michelin, this stadium is known for being one of the more intimidating rugby venues in the country, and perhaps the world, despite lacking the capacity that the national stadiums have. That is largely due to the steep seating on all sides of the field, but of course the spectators themselves contribute to that reputation. Not only is it intimidating, but it's also quite aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. Stade Marcel de Flandre. This stadium is named after a very influential former president of the club who was part of the resistance during World War II, and was ultimately captured and executed by the Nazis. That got a bit dark, but it's good to point out when a stadium is actually named after someone worthy. This stadium has had some work done in recent years. 1 or 2 new stands were built, and as a result, not only do all the stands now match each other, more or less, but all the seating is undercover. Matmut Stadium de Gerland. I don't want to keep on bringing up wars and death, but they started building the stadium prior to World War I, and had to wait until afterwards to get it finished. However, most of the stadium was rebuilt in the mid-90s, prior to the '98 Football World Cup, which transformed it into a rectangular stadium. One aspect of the original stadium that remained is the outer walls, which are pretty interesting actually. They didn't have a choice about that because once more they are protected as a historical monument. None of the interior was kept though, which is quite apparent. I quite like that unique seating layout. GGL Stadium. Immediately you'll notice the unique undulating roof that extends outwards from the seating over here. I don't have anything to add, but you did notice it. Actually, I do think it looks pretty cool, although if you were to paint it orange, it would look like a Hot Wheels track. Another unusual aspect of this stadium is the naming of each of the stands. Each one is named after an iconic rugby ground from around the world. There's the Eden Park stand, Ellis Park stand, Murrayfield stand, Twickenham stand. Sadly, there is no Ballymore Stadium stand, but I can understand that. Stade du Hameau. These shots are a little out of date, and in the years after these shots were taken, the stadium has changed a lot. It was considerably expanded 5 or 6 years back, and as you can see, that renovation added a stand at what were the two empty ends to create a fully enclosed stadium. Well, it's not a dome, but you know what I mean. It's looking pretty spectacular in here. I'm loving all the exposed concrete, as well as the unusual shape of the seating over here in the corner. Expansion was certainly a success. Stade M. Giral. This is home to a club called USA Perpignan, and they have actually contacted me and asked me to play out this statement they sent via voicemail.
We may be called USA, but we have nothing to do with America. What they call bread is an abomination. Their reluctance to adopt the metric system is due to anti-French racism. And finally, this is not French mustard, okay? Thank you, I'm a big fan of the channel, by the way.
Okay, that was weird, but thanks. The stadium is remarkably simple compared to what we've seen so far. Single tiered seating layout, not much else to say. Paris La Défense Arena. This is clearly the odd one out in this league, in that it has a roof, a fixed roof, meaning that racing never play a home game in the daylight. The original plans did include a retractable roof, but they were changed due to the fact that a fixed roof is better for the acoustics. With concerts in mind, of course. The early name of the stadium was U Arena. I'd assume that has to do with the U-shaped seating layout, which, once more, is for concerts primarily, but it also allows for this huge video board at the empty end. Well, it's actually a projector screen. It must be a very atypical experience watching a game here. Stade Jean Bouin. I believe another stadium in this league has a stand named after Jean Bouin. Can't remember which one though. Jean Bouin was actually a track athlete, which may seem a little strange, but this stadium used to have a track, so that makes sense. When it was transformed from a track stadium to a rugby one, around a decade ago, it gained one of the most remarkable exteriors going round. Not only is the undulating shape of it unique, but it's actually made out of concrete, a special kind of concrete reinforced by mesh. Anyway, this is a great stadium inside and out. Stade Maillot. This ground is named after Félix Maillot, a singer who bought the land which was an abandoned velodrome and donated it to the club, who then built the stadium. Good lad. As you can see, it has a quirky design, most notably this stand, which is not only especially steep due to room constraints, but also it's in the shape of a trapezoid? No, not quite. It seems like a decent stadium as is, however, they are planning on renovating it significantly, so we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Stade Ernest Wallon. This club was actually evicted from their old ground 40 or so years ago due to the construction of a ring road. Imagine something like that happening to Lambeau Field, the MCG, Wrigley Field or Mournflake Stadium. There would be riots in the newly built streets. But the French are famously quite passive and not really into protesting. Anyway, they did get funding for this rather nice stadium in exchange, so fair enough. It's probably not one of the more interesting designs, but it certainly does the job. So there you have it. As always, I'll try to pick a favourite. I think it'll have to be Stade Jean Bouin. I like when the architect thinks outside the box, and that's certainly what's happened here. Consider subscribing if you're new, and as always, thanks for watching, have a good one.